Chapter 1 Air Force Basic Training, Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas. I hadn't really put much thought into the first 5 weeks of my Air Force career. I knew basic training was the first step, but I dismissed it as a joke. At age 24, I was surrounded by mostly 18-year-olds that just graduated high school. It really was just an inconvenient pain in the ass to deal with, but I had to become an airman before I became a combat controller. There was just enough tedious busy work to force me to pay attention, instead of mindlessly cruising through. It was high school all over again, but I was a little more mature. Just a little. I was exposed early on by the drill instructors for not putting in any effort into our marching, and we marched everywhere. It seemed to me the only real purpose of marching was to kill massive amounts of time. We marched our way to the chow hall, where we had just a few minutes to scarf down cafeteria quality food and then form up to march back to our barracks. We stand outside each location that we marched to for what seemed like hours. After that, we go inside for more tedious tasks, like getting identification cards, fitting our dress blues, getting shots, and basically anything that wasn't exciting or fun. On a mild, overcast spring day in Texas, we were going to do the long, tedious walk to the chow hall. It had already begun to feel like a long, dull commute to a job in traffic that I've been doing for years. When we'd finally arrived at the chow hall, we formed up outside and stood at attention. I felt ridiculous with my arms straight and my body stiff, and as expected, I heard my name. "McDonald, what the hell's the matter with you?" the drill instructor asked. He was a large black man with a loud mouth. He had his large drill hat pulled down, almost covering his eyes. I'd already been fired from carrying the flag in front of our group because my marching skills sucked. They probably picked me based on my appearance, which was strong and fit, and I probably seemed squared away. But I had some glaring issues. "Get over here," the drill instructor shouted. I promptly ran over to the drill instructor as the group stopped the march and stood at attention. The drill instructor said, "Show me your march." I started the goofy walk with my arms straight and walked like there was a corncob up my ass. "No, no, no," he yelled as he smiled. "That's your problem. You're supposed to do it like this." I didn't notice, but he walked the opposite way that a normal human does. Every time his right leg went forward, so did his right hand. He was messing with me, but I didn't realize it. I walked around like an idiot. I focused so hard on the simple act of marching, I didn't realize I was walking unnaturally. He busted out laughing. "Ha ha! There you go, McDonald." About a minute later, I figured it out. He had me walking like a dumbass in front of everybody, and he and his drill instructor buddies had a good laugh. I seemed to have an immunity to being yelled at, which happened frequently, but it didn't impact me like it did with my father. I didn't take it seriously. We were required to shave every morning in about 2 minutes time frame, but I'd grown accustomed to shaving every 4 days in college, as I like to look a stubble. One morning, instead of cutting my face up with a cheap razor, I decided to skip the routine. About 11 o'clock that morning, in the middle of a large room with all of our bunk beds in it, a short drill instructor with a hoarse voice calmly walked over to me. I tried to figure out why the drill instructor was staring at me. I stood at attention in front of him. He got close to my face. "Oh shit," I thought. "Why didn't you shave this morning?" he yelled. Spit flew in my face. "I don't know, sir," I responded like I was supposed to. I addressed any drill instructor as sir or ma'am. "I don't get you, McDonald." His voice calmed a little. "Look at you. You should be a leader for all these people. Why do you keep fucking up everything?" I had no answer. I already had a microscope on me within the first few days of basic training. This became the theme for the rest of my training. Most of it I brought onto myself. I really could have been a stellar trainee, but I had no interest. I came into basic training in the best shape of my life, and the drill instructors could tell. The fear of losing fitness and showing up for my real training as a wad of cookie dough was at the forefront of my mind. By far, I was dropped the most for push-ups for things like my t-shirts not being folded properly, my bed not being made perfect, and of course my marching. At night before bed, I would do hundreds of push-ups, sit-ups, and workouts I had memorized from my workout book. Most nights, while everyone was in bed, With the room almost pitch black, I was doing supersets of 300 push ups and sit ups. Man, what are you doing? A voice asked from the darkness. I turned to see a tall, lanky figure approaching me. I knew who it was. It was one of the guys from my training flight that always seemed to be smiling. He'd already labeled me the machine after seeing me use the 20 minutes of exercise time on the quarter-mile track, which everyone else used for walking or light jogging, as interval training. I passed most people several times sprinting hard around the track. I'm just trying to stay in shape, man, I said, while I finished another set of 30 push-ups. Dude, you're going to make it all the way, he said. You're going to be a combat controller because you're fucking crazy. Since marching was the main event of basic training, after a couple of weeks I was sick of it. I expected to be critiqued on it and accepted it. Like certain things in my childhood, the amount of detail and effort required made marching perfect seem impossible. And even if I was the best, I couldn't care less. Marching seemed pointless, but I'm sure they had their reasons for harping about it. They shouted, "Attention to detail, teamwork, and if you can't do the simple shit, how can we trust you?" My thoughts were, give me something to give a shit about, and I will become the best. As we were marching slowly to the chow hall, I was out of step again. That's when a very short drill instructor, another one who I'd never seen before, came over in his huge drill instructor hat that made his head look small. "You think you're going to be a combat controller?" he shouted 2 inches from my face. I calmly glared into his eyes as he tried to intimidate me with his stare. I knew what all the drill instructors tried to do. They tried to intimidate us. I looked at the man's face. I was average height, but his face was several inches below mine. I noticed some kind of faint scarring, either from acne or a burn in his childhood. I stared back into his eyes. His glare softened, but I don't think he wanted me to see that. "Yes, sir," I shouted. "I know guys that are combat controllers," he continued shouting. "You want to jump out of a plane at night? You want to kill people? That's what they do." No shit, I thought. As the guy rambled on, I was imagining the sheer terror of jumping out of a plane at night. Can I do that? I thought. He was kind of getting to me. In a way, I imagined basic training a lot like prison, on a way less dangerous scale. There was no privacy, not even in the showers. And the days were spent doing the same task. We folded t-shirts, polished our boots with a wet cotton ball and polish, and kept on marching. I found ways to deal with it because I had to. I couldn't, or really didn't want to, fold my t-shirts, so I had someone else do it for me, while I did his job of making sure all the beds were perfectly straight in the morning. The drill instructors made it clear that we'd signed our lives away, and they were in control, while they constantly threatened that we'd never graduate. When the reveille horn sounded at 04:30 every morning, I jumped out of my top bunk to try to make my bed with perfect hospital corners. But there was a part of me that wondered why I signed up for any of that. On a very warm day, it almost seemed too warm to be standing in our dress blues, I actually felt the warmth of tears in my eyes as I stood in a formation on a grassy field waiting for my name to be called over a loudspeaker. I had made it into the Air Force, and that allowed my parents, brother, and sister to see me graduate something besides high school. Although I kept it into perspective and understood that it didn't mean much. As happy as I was getting that nonsense over with, I couldn't help but feel a bit of concern for starting combat control training. But I tried to push it aside and relish the experience of graduating from something, while my family was there to witness it. I was told 1,000 times that I made it through the transition from civilian to airman. I was a lot skinnier, in worse shape, and had a very short buzz cut with my fancy dress blue uniform and polished boots. My family didn't say much about the graduation, which wasn't unusual, but my father was especially quiet. I didn't say much to him either. Earlier in the day, when I showed him the building that I spent the 6 weeks of basic training in, I told him that we weren't allowed to walk across the grass, but he walked across anyway. My mother said, "Hey, get off the grass," in a joking manner, but my father didn't respond. He just kept walking. The military rules didn't apply to him, and I don't blame him for not understanding. He had no interest in the military, and he had no interest for me being there either. I wanted to explain more about what I was about to start to my family, but the topic didn't come up. I didn't even try to explain because I was deep in thought about what was next. As my parents left that day, I wondered what my life would be like when I saw them again. Would I still be in training for combat control? Would I even last a few days? I wondered. I knew I was about to enter some of the toughest military training in the world. The reality was upon me. The first part of combat control training was held on the other side of Lackland in an area called Medina. It was just a short school bus ride over to the other side of the large Air Force base, where I began the first part of the 2-year training pipeline. I felt a bit of panic and slight regret in the days following basic training. I started hearing about other jobs that people in my graduating class were going to do. They were talking about how much fun it was going to be traveling around the world and doing what seemed like ordinary jobs. Their party was beginning, but I was about to go through hell. I volunteered for a job where most people do not make it to the end. I listened to their plans, smiled and joked with them, and silently wondered if I could change my job choice. My cousin was a loadmaster. Maybe I should do that, I thought. I knew the people that knew me in basic training were rock solid in the belief that I would breeze through training. But I knew from SEAL documentaries that you couldn't tell who would make it. The muscular guys are the first to quit, while the weak-looking guys make it to the end. I quickly tried to forget my nickname given to me by the drill instructors. "What are you looking at, Buff? You can't march for shit, Buff." I tried to block all that out as I boarded a bus over to Medina.